Hey guys, it's Marlon and welcome to my Henry costume time-lapse. In this video, I'm going to be making the Dark Mage Henry for a Fire Emblem Awakening group at Otakon 2019. I've sped up the clips about 20 times the original speed, but if you have any guesses for how long you think this project took in total, please leave them in the comments below. You can follow along on my progress highlight on Instagram too, but here I'm going to be explaining what I'm doing as we go along. If you have any questions, let me know, but for now, let's get started. To start off, I have the shirt pieces cut out already, so I'm just sewing the top together. I basically cut it into 6 strips to form the seams at the front of his top, then I go over those seams with top stitching on both sides. It kinda took forever, but if I'm honest, I really like the way it looked in the end. Top stitching can be kinda tough, but I always say to myself and to others that the machine always wants to sew straight, you just kinda have to help it out. Then I add a zipper on the middle seam with enough left over on the top to continue the collar later. Now that the top stitching is done, I'm cutting off all the excess thread. I always like to pause and cut long threads when I'm at a stopping point. It just looks neater when trying it on and also stops your sewing needle from getting tangled later. Now I'm pinning the front and the back pieces together. I'm not doing the seam technique on the back because you're not going to see it anyway. I get a lot of questions about the kind of fabric that I use for different projects, but the thing is, I don't really know fabric types that well. I usually just pick whatever seems like it would work for the project, so this is some kind of thin, stretchy t-shirt fabric. Before I sew on the sleeves, it's time to try on what I've got. It would be a shame to seam rip sleeves later if the fit is off, but lucky for me, everything is looking great, so it's time to continue. I'm going to be using this gorgeous glitter black mesh I got when I was in Canada for the sleeves. It's so flowy and soft, I seriously could not wait to use it for this project. I cut out the sleeves as straight rectangles at first. Things that are flowy or billowing in designs are often gathered to get that effect, so I'm going to do some serious gathering on the wrists and the shoulders, but once the gathering is done, I fit the sleeves properly to the top. While I'm cutting out the sleeves, I also fit the collar, so collars are always super difficult for me for some reason, and this one was no exception, as you'll see later. To gather fabric, you just sew a straight stitch and then you pull one of the threads really tight and it makes it kind of ruffle, and then you just sew over the ruffle to keep it in place. The collar was frustrating just because the fabric kept rolling under itself every 2 seconds, so I kept having to straighten it out. What matters is that it's on there, so we're all good in the end. I also stretched the collar to add black ribbon around the neck and down the zipper, and there's probably a better technique for this, but it ended up working out just fine. With the sleeve sewn on, we have a finished top. Wahoo! Now, here's where I start to do research on other people's cosplays for the rest of the outfit because Fire Emblem costumes make absolutely no sense. Looking to see how other people designed his outfit really helped me get an idea of how to pattern the neck piece, which somehow I found to be so incredibly confusing. Anyway, Henry cosplayers, I hope you relate. Forgetting about the collar for now, I'm making the skirt for his little drapey thing out of this purple fabric I had lying around. Now you can see that my patterning process is very literally just pinning stuff down, taking a few measurements, and hoping for the best. I ended up getting frustrated with all the math and I kind of just cut out this weird shape and then altered it from there, so sorry, I can't offer many tips on that. I also used a long enough scrap piece in order to make the waistband, which run around just to keep it in place. Then I spent literal years doing a rolled hem on the bottom of the skirt. I'm thinking about making another ball gown this year, but this skirt really made me have some second thoughts on rolled hems because they truly take so much out of you, and this one wasn't even that long, so I can't imagine doing another gown. Luckily, the skirt fits on over my head, so I don't have to worry about adding a zipper. So here, all I'm doing is gathering the skirt, and I hand stitch it so that it stays in the right shape without me having to adjust it every 5 seconds. Goodbye. Time to pause on the sewing for a second and move on to the accessories. Something I learned from a lot of other cosplayers and cosplay tutorials online is that a lot of things that look like they're made of fabric in a design are usually just made of foam for actual cosplay. Proportions of what characters wear can be crazy and the stiffness just does not match with what fabric can actually do. So what I'm doing here is I'm making the waistband for the skirt out of foam and then I'm going to be wrapping it in purple spandex. This technique doesn't only work with pieces of fabric that seem to have weird proportions or weird stiffness, it also works for a lot of armor pieces. So if you guys have seen my Panty Anarchy cosplay, I actually, for a lot of her gold accessories, am wrapping foam in gold spandex, and it actually looks more like armor than anything spray painted because oftentimes spray paint can dry weird or be hard to deal with, so I've just resorted to using spandex around foam and it's worked super well. So you can see it come together here and it leaves the cleanest lines ever. So while we're talking about gold pieces, I'm going to be making the gold cuffs that go around the sleeves, like the wrists and around the ankles. So the ankle ones are going to be attached with Velcro, the wrists are just going to be slid over my hands, but in this one I'm making the ankle pieces. So you can see me measuring around my ankle to get the measurement right and the length right. And basically for each ankle, I'm going to be making 2 strips of rectangles out of foam. So one is going to be the width, like the overall width that it's going to be, and then the second one's going to be a little bit thinner in width, and they're going to be stacked on top of each other. And what this does is that when the spandex is then stretched over it, it's going to make the wristband or the ankle band look like it has a beveled edge. So you can see there's actually two that are done already. I think I did the wrist ones first and forgot to film. But you can see that the spandex stretched over a thinner piece over a thicker piece gives the illusion of a beveled edge without having to do any kind of foam work. It is such a good tip and trick. I really hope you guys use it. It looks so good and so clean, and it does not chip or anything because it's fabric, of course. So here I'm actually going to be remaking the little kind of circle clasp that's on the waistband. So I made one and I actually hot glued down around the edge so it didn't have the same bevel as the rest of the wristbands and ankle bands. But I realized that that's actually what I wanted. So I'm basically cutting a circle, and then when you're wrapping fabric around anything that's a circle shape, you need to kind of cut little like tabs out of around the side, so you have to leave a really big seam allowance, and that just makes sure it's smooth around the edge and doesn't leave like weird angles. It can be a little bit difficult at first, so make sure you use enough fabric to try again, but now you can see what it looks like after the beveled edge, and I think it looks a lot better. So now what I'm working on is the kind of loincloth thing attached to the skirt. So I'm starting off with the gold. The underside is going to be gold and the top side is going to be purple. I don't know if that's canon. I don't know where I grabbed that from, but whatever. I might not have had enough purple fabric actually. But starting with the buckle, just to get the proportions right and the length, I'm cutting out the gold first. And then I cut out the purple piece that's identical to the gold. Except it's a little bit smaller so that I have room for the gold trim that needs to go on the outside. And I'm sure there's probably an easier way of doing this, but at the time this is just what I thought of, especially considering the shape, so you'll see it in the next clip. Now I'm going to start sewing a bunch of stuff together. So here I'm actually sewing on the gold trim for the outside of the belt. I got a little sloppy on the underside, but you're not going to see it, so it doesn't really matter, and I think it looks really good on the outside. So I'm basically sewing right sides together and then flipping it over, and there's going to be a little gold trim. And then for the loincloth, I am sewing all those pieces together, and you can see that the purple now has white underneath it. And that's because I put in some interfacing so that it'd be stiffer and hang heavier. Now I'm just doing some more top stitching because it just helps everything lay down flat. I couldn't figure out a pretty clean way to do the back of the belt and the wristband, so here I'm just hot gluing some stuff together that I couldn't really think through. Looking back, I still don't really know what I could have done to make them cleaner on the inside, but ultimately it doesn't matter, and I'm really happy with the final result, so bear with me as I hot glue some stuff together. With that, the majority of this costume is actually finished. So I've split this video into two parts because I thought a half-hour plus long video was kind of excessive. So this is the first part. It has most of the sewing and most of the base, and then in the next part we are going to be working mostly on that neck piece and I think some accessories. I'm not exactly sure what I put into part two, but anyway, stay posted for part two. I'm going to be working on it right now. I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know if you want to see more of these in the future. I really enjoyed doing this time lapse. Let me know if there's any costumes in the future that you guys want to see me do. I would love to do it, and if this was too long for you, and you just skip to the end, I guess. You can totally check out my Instagram. In my progress highlight, I update kind of just every so often how I'm doing and what's going on with the costume. So thank you guys for coming, and stay tuned for part 2.